During the past 40 years, I've had many styles of painting, but always my color and texture have been the main emphasis. I've done Impressionism, Realism, Abstractism, I've even done portraits, but usually the main thrust has been in color and in texture. Even some of the textures I've done have been paper, they've been using metals, all kinds of sand and gravel and paper and wax. There's many ways I can use those, and in the place where I have my studio now, it's been a wonderful experience because I've been able to pick up pieces of metal that came from the original factory, and this was the forge where they made the metal tools. So I've been able to pick up pieces of rusty implements and use them in my work, and also some of the fabrics that were manufactured in this same factory, textile factory. And then of course I've been able to pick up all kinds of sand, gravel. I use wax, encaustic method, and I also have used paper, and always been able to use anything I can find that I can implement into the work. I was doing a series of walls. My first series of walls came from trips to Italy, and I had a whole series called the Tuscan Walls, and this is where I began using a lot of the textures of sand and gravel, and that's when I was ready to move to Mexico, and when I did, it opened up a whole new world of walls for me. Walls have always been of interest to me. It's the ancient walls, the old crusty walls with many, many layers, and that's also the way I approach my painting, is in many layers. But the layers of history that are embedded in the Mexican walls are incredible, and you wonder what's happened in front of this wall maybe 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Was there a war planned or a revolution? Was there a love scene? Maybe possibly a murder. Who knows? Maybe a kiss or a goodbye or a meeting for the first time. So those walls have been there, and they're witness. If they had ears or could talk, I wonder what we would know. But that's what really keeps me interested in doing walls, is because of the layering and the wonderful history. And sometimes there are inscriptions and scratchings that with time crumble off, and underneath those layers you find more and more things that were written centuries ago, and that's the only place I know where you can find them. When I moved to San Miguel, it's a beautiful colonial city. The colors and the textures bombarded me. It's absolutely a feast of texture and color. And the posters on the walls were so colorful, I began incorporating them into my work as collages. And friends of mine would bring me some of the old bullfight posters, the corridas, and I always instruct them, don't bring me any posters until after the fight has been fought. We don't want to cheat or take away anything from the toreros. So I have a collection of them, and they've been very popular, and they're more fun to work with because I love the color. And I wish I could put the music into the art, but I listen to it when I paint it, so it's almost there. And I continue to incorporate all kinds of of the textures. Even people have been bringing me fragments of the walls that they find on the ground after construction of or reconstruction of old homes. And I take those fragments of walls and I pound them with a hammer, pulverize them into pieces, and then I incorporate that into my gesso and actually use those into my canvas, onto my canvas surfaces. So people actually get a little piece of San Miguel to take home with them when they get a piece of my work that is about the walls. Lately, the Mexican pyramids have inspired me with their fascinating murals. Their craftspersons and their historians left a fascinating history by using carving techniques, paintings, etchings, and drawings on the walls. I've been lucky enough to visit several of the pyramids that have these beautiful murals, and the names of some of these sites are Palenque. Bonampak has some of the best murals of all. Then there's Monte Alban, the Sol and the Luna, and nearby San Miguel, which most people don't even know exists, is another discovery of murals on the walls of a pyramid called the Cañada del Virgen. This has been a very big inspiration for me because I have been able to visit it and work there. In La Cañada de la Virgen, I was fortunate enough to work with an excavation crew and be an actual archaeologist for a day. It was a splendid time spent, and it was a great inspiration for my work. I felt after I worked there the need to explore farther into the history of the Mexican murals and to give my impression of what I would say were the murals without actually copying them or doing a realistic painting of them. So I prefer to do my own interpretation of the murals of the Mexican pyramids, but this was truly the first inspiration for me to actually produce the work. Working shoulder to shoulder with these geologists and the helpers and all the crew was a wonderful honor for me, because I couldn't keep from thinking that some of these people's ancestors probably lived here or lived in the surrounding areas. And many of the people that were working on the pyramid that day had walked 2 hours to get to work and had to walk 2 hours back. So this really inspired me what was so important about that pyramid and the mystical feelings that one gets when they're there and surrounded in that aura of mysticism. The colors that they find in the murals in all of the Mexican pyramids are rich, and most of them are earth tones, the ochres, the wonderful yellow oxides and the red oxides, not to mention cobalt blues and the turquoise colors, and they're all natural pigments. So finding and duplicating those pigments has been a challenge, and it's one that I enjoy going into the studio each day and working with. Using these colors is always an inspiration, and it's always fun trying to duplicate them, and also the textures. And I've used many different mediums to accomplish the textures that you see on the walls of the murals of the pyramids. One of them has been handmade paper, and I've actually poured forms and made molds and done my own images, which I then incorporate into the actual canvas. I've also used some of the crumbling walls, and I've used wax, cera, and paper. So far, I'm at that point where I'm not finished. You don't know what I may use next, but I'm always out there exploring, and these walls will always be a challenge for me. Much of the history of Mexico has been preserved in these pyramids. My paintings the desire for my paintings is to capture the flavor of the history of Mexico. I also intend to honor the civilizations, the culture, and of course the people and their achievements.